Okay, this next one is going to look at area, and we're going to throw density on the end there as well. Okay, so again, with like distance, calculating area, we need to know the scale. Okay. Now the scale, again, same map as last time. Semester 2, 2013, Year 11 Geography. Scale 1 to 25,000. Alright, now in area, we can talk about area in kilometers squared or in hectares. Now 1 kilometer squared equals 100 hectares. Now when you're doing exam questions, I've got an example here, they normally have a benefit note to remind you that 100 hectares equals 1 kilometer squared. So what we're going to do, we're just going to get straight into an example, because that's the best way to show you from this exam. Okay, so it says locate the fenced citrus orchard property located within grid square AR 1130. So that's across the hallway, 11, up the stairs, 30. So it's this one here, and you can see citrus, and those little green those little green dots there signify orchard. I'll just show you. Okay, so we're looking at these kind of green dots, which is an orchard. Alright, and around it is just a thin black line, so that's a fence. This is what I'm talking about there. That little word there says citrus, there's a green for the orchard, and this black line here. Okay, that's the fenced area. So we've located that. The total area of the land enclosed within the property of fence line is nearest to 25,000 hectares, 2,500 hectares, 250 or 25 hectares. Okay, now this is where you don't exactly need to know the exact area of it to be able to calculate this. For example, if we convert these areas into kilometers squared, you'll be able to see 25,000 hectares so we're going to cross off 2 zeros, would be 250 kilometers squared. 2,500 hectares would be 25 kilometers squared. 250 would be 2.5 kilometers squared. 25 would be 0.25 kilometers squared. Okay, now move that aside for the second, and let's look at this area roughly. Okay, now if this is a scale of 1 to 25,000, that means 1 centimeter represents 0.25 kilometers. Okay, so 4 centimeters would represent 1 kilometer, and 4 by 4 would represent 1 kilometer squared. These grid squares that are here are 4 centimeters apart for your convenience. Okay, so we know that this whole square, 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters, this whole square is only 1 kilometer squared. Alright, so that big square with the orchard is inside it, something like this, the whole square is 1 kilometer squared. So we know that it has to be D. Easy as that. Without calculating the difference, what the area could be specifically, we know automatically that it's D. Now this is a stage 2 semester 2 exam question, and this is what I mean by multiple choice, that a lot of the times you can figure out the answer without doing it exactly, especially when it comes to area. So at this stage, this is the base knowledge that you need to be able to understand area. But for the sake of it, let's do roughly. We'll find we'll see if we can figure out roughly what the area is. So I'm just going to trace it onto here. Okay, roughly that's what the area looks like. Now if we do, we can put a grid pattern over this. Okay, so we draw these lines in. Okay, so each one of these squares, which is 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, would be 0.25 kilometers squared. Okay, so what we do is we piece it together like a puzzle, how many different pieces we have. So first you tick off how many whole pieces there are. Alright, so there's one whole piece here. Alright, so there's one whole. Now we try and piece the others together to see if we can form either wholes or halves. So for example, if I see this one here and this one here, I can see that together they may form a whole. Alright, so I'll tick off those two and say we have another whole. Now it can get more and more difficult, but you just use your estimate. Maybe together we say that this plus this plus this plus this plus this could equal another whole. Okay, so we would say that one, so them together would equal one more whole, so we have 3 in total at 0.25 kilometers squared. So 3 times 0.25 would give us 0.75 kilometers squared. Alright, or 75 hectares. Now that is a bit away from the actual, but we're just talking about so this isn't what it is actually. Our estimation is probably closer. Just remember, this is an estimation, so it's not like it has to be exactly accurate, but the nearer the better. Now to add on to the end here, density, and we're normally talking about buildings. They may also talk about watering, like water stations or other things like this, but a lot of the times it's buildings. And they're asking you how many there are. So in density we normally express them as however many units per kilometer squared. So in this would be buildings per kilometer squared. Alright, we'll take an example here. They might tell you that in the area reference 0626. What's the density? And luckily we have the 0626 fits perfectly as 1 kilometer squared because it's 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters. So the whole grid square is 1 kilometer squared. So all we have to do is count the amount of buildings that are in there. The buildings, as you can see, are these little black dots, building or shed. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Alright, so we have 14 buildings per kilometer squared. And that's density.